Okay. So just so that you are aware that that is happening, this is mostly, I'm hoping that for those who aren't able to make it this evening, that I can share this recording with them, but I just wanted to make you aware that that is happening. And also just to say a big thank you to the Rhode Island Humanities, because we have a grant from them this year that's called Exploring the Archives. And so some of this work is related to us being able to accomplish the goals from that grant, which is basically to let people know what we have in the archives and to share that with everyone. And I'm going to ask everyone to do some muting here for those who aren't muted, because the background noise gets distracting to everyone else. So I just took care of that for everyone. Um, so now, why are you not working? So these are just some introductory notes. I imagine, given what I see from this crowd, that many of you are probably very aware of all of these terms. But on the off chance that some of you are new to the lesbian community, or new to, haven't been around, relatively younger, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just, to remind us that basically women's music focuses on women's lives, experiences, and has often covered various feminist topics. And usually it's mostly lesbian. And we use women as a euphemism for what we really mean is lesbian music, but it's not always lesbian, and it's not always about lesbian topics. So that's kind of that. And it also covers a lot of different genres. For those of us who have listened to it for many years know that there's quite a variety in what we consider women's music. And that it's also been supported by the creation of a music industry, which included record labels and distributors and concert producers and festivals and people willing to invite folks to come into a church basement to play a gig, or some of those kinds of things. Women's and lesbian bookstores really helped this out by selling the records and making the music available to anybody who wanted to hear it. There were publications called Paid My Dues and Hotwire that got the word out about what the musicians were doing and sometimes where they were performing. And then just generally a lot of collaborative spirit, as many musicians were supporting each other and playing on each other's albums and those kinds of things. So I just have to say that, this old DJ just loves to spin a tune. And given the numbers of CDs and albums that are in my closet, it was hard to me to figure out how to kind of hone this down and make it really manageable, so I wasn't talking for 3 hours. So basically, I kind of put up some criteria for myself. And the first is that anything I show is because we actually have it in our Wanderground Lesbian Archive Library collection, either as an album or as a CD or as a cassette, somewhere or other, it's in our collection. Some of you sent in requests, so I think I've gathered most of those. If I missed any, I apologize, but I think I've got them all. And then I figured, well, let me try as much as possible to make this New England, although it's not completely New England. But I tried to pick songs that were celebrating being lesbian as one of the criteria for what I chose. Many of the songs I put in here are taken from first albums. And even with all of these guardrails, I probably still overdid it. But I hope that as we move along, I encourage you to place your stories and memories in the chat if you so wish. That would be really grand if you did that. And it's going to be hard for me to pay attention to that while I'm doing this, but we'll come back to those chat items at some point later on. So we're going to start with the 1970s. I realized in the advertisement, I said 1980s and 1990s. And then when I got to thinking about it, I was like, well, that's kind of late. We really started in the 1970s. What was I thinking? So I moved back a little bit. And so I'm just wondering, this is kind of a trick question. What would you consider to be the first women's music album? If anybody has a thought, you could just, I know I muted you, but you could unmute yourself and shout it out if you like.
I think it would be Alex. I think Alex Dopkin did the first
Lavender Women.
Lavender
Okay.
Women,
Yeah.
Lavender Woman.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Maxine Feldman.
That's later. That's pretty later. We'll get to her, but that's later.
Speak it. Changer and the Change by Chris Williamson.
No, Olivia came later.
Okay, so given guys, so given that I said the first women's music album, not lesbian, but women's, we would actually have to go with Mountain Moving Day, which came out in 1972. It featured the Chicago Women's Liberation Rock Band and our New England connection, the New Haven Women's Liberation Rock Band, and they mostly did largely. I mean, there were lesbians in the group, but they mostly did feminist music and music centered on women's rights. Um, uh, and the connection was like, why was it Chicago and New Haven? It took me a while to figure out, oh, it's because of Susan and Jennifer Abbott, who were sisters. Jennifer lived in New Haven and Susan lived in Chicago. And so that is probably the first album, although one might argue and say, well, really it was Fanny from 1969. They were the first all women's rock band back in the day. Or we could say Teresa Dell did a very early album called Prophecy's Child, but I wouldn't consider that necessary. That was sort of pre-women's music a little bit, but we'll cover both of them later on. So back to the other question then is, who would be the first out lesbian music album? Go, Linda.
That would be Alex.
That would be Alex. You are right. So this is Alex with Lavender Jane Loves Women.
The woman in your life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. The woman in your life knows simply what is true. She knows a simple way to touch to make you whole now. The woman in your life, she can touch so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. And who knows more about your story, about your struggles in the world? Who cares more to bless your weary shoulders than the woman in your life as she's trying to come through? A woman's voice with messages of woman's feelings. Oh, the woman in your life, she can feel so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. And who is sure to give you courage, and who will surely make you strong, and who will bear all the joy that is coming to you. If not the woman in your life, she's someone to pursue. She's patient and she's waiting, and she'll take you home now. The woman in your life, she can wait so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. Because the woman in your life, the woman in your life, the woman in your life is you.
So Alex, we miss her dearly so much, right? For those of you who may not be aware, she did leave us in May of 2021. But she did have a huge impact on us being able to say lesbian in our music and being proud about putting it out there. The next person that I have lined up here is Meg. I know you know. Olivia Records. This was one of her first albums. And so let's see if the sound on this one is any better. And if Linda or somebody could give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, let me know how this goes, okay?
Sweet darling, woman, now that the past is left behind, won't you try to see my state of mind? Loving you, I still can't run from you, sweet darling woman. Do you still run away, even though every day I spend loving you? What else can I do, sweet darling woman? Please don't take my heart so carelessly. Just say the words, and I'll be by your side. Oh, sweet darling woman, we're here just to be satisfied. You know I need your touch to let you feel how much I am your sweet darling woman. Do you still run away, even though every day I spend loving you, sweet darling, sweet darling woman, even though you disappear, I will be here, sweet darling, darling, though you may disappear, I will be here.
I'm thinking that song had a huge impact on many of us because I got 2 or 3 requests specifically for that song. So there it is. I don't know why it does that. So the next year coming up is 1974, which is Willie Tyson came out with an album in that same year, but that's also the first year of the National Women's Music Festival that happened in Illinois at the university, Champaign-Urbana. And the reason I put the album up here with the full count on it is for those who may not be aware, that was her first album, but it also has a picture of the Llamas Women's Bookstore softball team on the cover, which always kind of tickles me. And there's Willie standing in the center back row, as proud as she can be with the rest of the softball team. And this picture of her with Maxine kind of just brightens me up a little bit, just makes me giggle. And she had that wonderful song that said, "You would look swell in nothing," which we don't have time to play today, but I just had to throw that in. Then comes Chris Williamson in 1975 with The Changer and the Changed. And I found this video that I think is pretty fun.
I didn't set out to write what's called women's music, but apparently I did. It's music that speaks certainly to a woman's heart. Sometimes I look back and remember so clearly those early days when we first moved into the studios and started gathering women from all over the world to begin to play this thing called women's music, which, as far as I'm concerned, made Christians made up. To this day, when people pick that album up and they don't know anything about women's music or me, or they don't have any of that groundwork, any of that attachment, it's like a portal through which they go. And when they go through it, something happens to them that's like a magnetic transference. What I love about this particular album is that it remains mysterious to me. Its effect on people. And it isn't just grounded in time zone in which it was born, in those 70s. Yes, it came out of that. And I think I set up, I mean, music's nothing more than vibration, really. We know that. And beyond vibration, there is nothing. So apparently I set up the vibration just right, so that in each song, from piece to piece to piece, and as it goes, it's like a little journey that they take. It still happens to this day. I only played one guitar song on Changer and the Changed. It's a country tune. I mean, there's much backstory really. It's the "I'm So Sad You Left Me" country song. But it has a tiny bit of tongue-in-cheek in it, and this part on the guitar, which is just me telling me, don't get too serious about this. Don't be too darn sad. Tuning Star, when you hear it on the Changer album, it just gallops, man, it just shoots. It just can't help itself. You can hardly rein it in. I did write it driving, just like it says, driving through the desert, heading towards LA. I put the top up and rain was just pounding, and it provided the rhythm, and the rhythm of the road. And as songwriters, you know that. The rhythms are everywhere. If you're on a train and you're writing a song, it's going to take the rhythm of the train. It will absorb, you know, and this was the rhythm of the road and the rain and all of that, and my urgency to get to LA.
Yeah, I'm just a dream child of desire.
But I can always do anything from the Changer and the Change, because that whole premise, the title, holds true. That I was changed. I'm endlessly changed every day, and as such, I try to put that, and an artist, I try to put that back out in the world so that everyone can become that too. I'm not the only one, you know, and I've never claimed to be it. I just let it come through me.
Love of my life, I am crying, I am not dying, I am dancing, dancing along.
The way I heard this song beginning was with a hymn that was my favorite hymn as a child. Open mine eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Open mine eyes, illumine me. Spirit. Come to your life like a warrior, nothing will bore you. You can be happy. At the time, to tell lesbians that they could be happy was revolutionary. I didn't know it. I just thought, it's a simple thing. You can be happy or unhappy. It's not about who you love. It's about your nature. It's about your soul. This is a song of the soul. And that was the song of my soul at the time. It just came pouring out of me in the most beautiful way.
Sweet woman,
Sweet Woman was a love letter written to me by my girlfriend at the time. I've heard tales from women who say, I almost drove off the road because all of a sudden it hit me, this was a song about loving a woman, sung by a woman. And it just hit people so powerfully. And you know, I was so innocent at the time. I just thought, well, you love who you love, you know, what's the big deal? If people said to me, you know, it's illegal, I went, what? I had no idea. A lot of these songs came out of a pure kind of innocence on my part, and a pondering endlessly, as I do now, of the human condition. That's what interests me. How it is that we are caught between the devils and the angels, and somewhere in this strange middle ground, we've got to figure it out.
Just won't let me be a little passage of time till I hold you and you'll be my sweet woman, rising so fine. A little passage of time till I hold you and you'll be my sweet woman, rising so fine.
So that same year, Kate Gardner came on the scene. And she is a New Englander. She lived up in Deer Isle, Maine, up sometimes known as Idaho. A flautist, a composer, a singer. She played the guitar and a piano, and she is very talented. Another lesbian who left us all too soon. She passed away in 2002. I also want to go back. My partner reminded me today, she was like, you know, that's 50 years ago. I was like, what? Like, I don't know about the rest of you, but that just completely blew my mind that all of these tunes from this period are like now 50 years ago. That's sort of a little bit mind blowing. One of the, I was requested to play a song off Moon Circles, which I will do momentarily. But I did want to mention that one of my favorite pieces that she did was the Rainbow Path, which was music, modal music inspired by the chakras. And she specifically named the green chakra, the green wood, and she calls that tone that it's in the lesbian mode. So if you ever have a chance to look at it or hear it, I think you can get it. I forgot to mention earlier, a lot of these tunes, if you don't have them in your own collection, you can actually find them on YouTube or Spotify. So that might be worth looking up at some point. But for Moon Circles, I want to go and play The Prayer of Aphrodite. I apologize for that. Sometimes my mouse is just a little too sensitive. So also in 1995 from Northampton, the Deadly Nightshade. I'm not as familiar with this album, I have to admit, so I don't know that I can really say much more about it, but if others want to offer some ideas in the chat, that would be really nice. Also from Germany that year, there was an album that was called Flying Lesbians, which had this bright, shiny Labrys on the front cover, which was really exciting, and it had a fun tune on it that was called I'm a Lesbian, How About You? So that was another fun album that came out during that time. And now we're into 1976, and Linda Shearer did an album that was called A Lesbian Portrait. And one of the things that I always found really exciting about it was on the front cover, right there, right in front of my face. Lesbian music for lesbians only. And Linda happens to be with us this evening. So Linda, do you want to say something about that a little bit?
Thanks, Mev. You know, ever since you asked me to do it, I've been thinking about, you asked me if I wanted to talk about the fact, and I'll keep it brief, why I did that. Lesbian separatism, I can't speak for all the lesbian separatists back then, but for myself and the friends around me, it was aspirational. It was a protest against patriarchy. It was the recognition that we were building a culture, a new lesbian culture, that we needed separate space to do that. The album came out, I think, in '77, and I played in Michigan in '78 and in '79. And when I played in Michigan, I also had the concerts designated for lesbians only. And again, aspirational. Nobody was being carded. Nobody was being asked at the door when they bought the album if they were lesbians. Nobody was being asked when they sat down in the concert in Michigan if they were lesbians. But the idea was, we are entitled to this space. We are entitled to claim lesbian space. And I wanted to participate in that claiming. And when my band, Family of Women, toured and we tried to do lesbian-only concerts, I mean, there was tremendous backlash, and not only from the straight community, but from the women's community as well. And it was a difficult time. The lesbian wars were difficult during the mid-'70s, and I appreciate the fact that you have the album represented, and thank you for doing that, Mev.
Well, you're welcome. As a radio DJ player in the 90s, I took it very seriously and I never played this album. And then finally, as it got into 2000, I said, well, I think it's probably okay now. I'm going to play it.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
did toward the end. I finally did allow myself to play it on the radio.
That's good.
But also for those of you who are interested in hearing more about Linda's music, she will be performing in Northampton later on in October. I've put the flyer up, so copy it down if you're interested in going. Go follow through on that. And now we're going to listen to a tune that's actually not, we're going to listen to Family of Women. It's not the album version because it's hard for me to get that from album to this media. But I did find it on a CD that's called High Risk, the Chicago Women Sing Out for Lesbian Community Cancer Project. And Linda tells me that it was recorded at the California IMA, which we'll talk about more later. June Millington of Fanny fame had a lot to do with that. And they are now located in Western Mass. So this song still to this day, I don't know, it just speaks to a core in some way that is really important to me. So
looking through a future window, breathing in the coolness of the young moon,
all the colors of the shifting, once empty sky. Women passing through the world, sharing tears and struggle with the strength of miles behind. We are bringing in the dawn. Family of woman, we've begun. Family of woman, we have become. Family of woman, we are tearing down the walls. Family of woman, we are more than slaves, more than dolls. Women sing of mountain moving days, the day is now. Armies made of lovers cannot fail. The woman order is changing, the future time is sung. Sisters, I can feel you, I can touch you, I can need you, I can kiss you. Now I can love you. Dawning of a new beginning, our ancient anger goes on living through the souls of women who have touched, find time to grow. Sister lovers building fury, throwing out the lies and stories, making room for touching in a new way. We are bringing in the dawn. Family of woman, we've begun. Family of woman, we have become. Family of woman, we are tearing down the walls. Family of woman, we are more than slaves, more than dolls. Women sing of mountain moving days, the day is now. An army made of lovers cannot fail. The woman order is changing, the future time is sung. Sisters, I can feel you, I can touch you, I can need you, I can kiss you. Now I can love you.
Just have to let that sit for a minute. Thank you for writing such an amazing song, Linda. It's really very powerful and still very moving. That same year in 1976 is the next year, actually. The first year for the Michigan Women's Music Festival happened in 1976. That was the year Margie Adam came out with the Songwriter album. BB Caroche came out with their album that year. There was a bunch of albums that year. Berkeley Women's Collective with the song Gay and Proud was on that particular record. Maybe some of you remember some of these. Cassie Culver, Three Gypsies, Sweet Honey in the Rock was their first album. Not lesbian per se, but definitely embraced by many in the lesbian community throughout the years. And then there was this band that was called the Dyke Tones. I don't know if anybody actually heard them or not. I never have. Had this little cassette tape that they did back in 1977. They were a 50s rock band. And they played a lot in Provincetown. This cassette actually came out in 1984, even though they were playing in 1977. And they celebrated their 25th anniversary at the Pied, which existed then in Provincetown during Women's Week. And I'm going to have to just stop sharing this for a minute and start sharing something else. Share.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, a rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, a rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, a rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
What we gave, the culture we were carrying with the music, was saying the message, you can be you. You know, we know it's difficult.
You did it for fun.
Yeah.
You guys had a ball.
It was a release for
Right,
all of us.
for all
from
of
our
you
day
to do
jobs.
it,
Yeah.
and you dressed up. You had your hair slicked back. You all used Brill cream, right? Or you also dippity do.
It came out easier.
Yeah, I know dippity do and Brill cream. I did the whole spoolies to your head, right? So you had female and male personas,
We
and that
did.
changed between songs. Is that right?
Yes, we did 2 sets usually,
Yeah.
and whoever was butch in one set would be femme in the
Okay,
other. Just so
okay.
people could see the rounded personas. And we were the only out lesbian group too.
None of the others were out.
No. They were
Who-
at the Women's Music Festival. At the end of our show, we would run off the stage and just form a line, and people would, as they left, we would shake their hands and thank them for coming. And they would say, there was more than once a woman my age, just quietly, tears streaming and shaking my hand and saying, thank you. This is my music, and I got to dance with my girlfriend tonight.
Rock, 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 rock. Rock, 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 rock. Rock, 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 rock. Rock, 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 rock.
I was really pleased that I found that little bit because it's hard to find their music anywhere except for this little cassette tape. So that was a lot of fun. The Dyke Tones, what's not to love? All right, and then there was Lesbian Concentrate, also came out in 1977. And this, for those who are not aware of this album, you can see the orange juice can there. For those who are not familiar, this was a compilation of both music and spoken word. It featured Pat Parker and Judy Grahn, as well as many of the performers who had been performing with Olivia Records at that time. And the one person I picked out to play, and it was a talking back to Anita Bryant's anti-gay crusade, where she was talking about Save the Children. And since she was the advocate for oranges and orange juice at the time, this is where this particular cover came from, which I've heard was voted the worst cover ever, but I think it's hysterically clever. But one of the recordings on the song is Gwen Avery. And this was the only recording she had done for a long, long time. She didn't record her first album until 2001. So this was the only, she'd been performing around San Francisco, locally, but This was the only recording of her. So I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's quite long, but I do want to give you some flavor of it.
By the way, this is one of the songs that will be on my CD. All my love, all my love, please take all my love inside of you. It would be so good for me to endlessly live in the soul of you. I wanna be your sugar mama. I wanna be your sugar mama, be your sugar mama every day. I wanna love you in the morning, baby, when the bells are ringing. I'm gonna love you every evening. Can't you hear my heart just singing? And I want you to see how sweet a woman's love can be. It's gotta be you and me. Come, endlessly, just getting sugar, 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 sugar. I wanna be your sugar mama. Wanna be your sugar mama, be your sugar mama every day. I'm gonna fix your chocolate cookies, bring them to your bed.
So sorry to cut it off. But it does kind of go on and on and on. But you can get that off of YouTube. It's on YouTube. So I will make the links for some of these things available later on, so that you can go and watch the whole thing. So the next person that's up, and I did have a request. Did I skip? Did I skip? I did skip one. Sorry. That same year also we had Linda Tillery and Teresa Troll and Woody Simmons. Were some other musicians that came out that year. Linda Tillery with Womanly Way was one of the big songs on that particular album. And Teresa Troll was singing I'd Like to Make Love to You. So those were some other definitely lesbian-centered tunes. And then Teresa Dell came on in 1978. And she actually had that earlier album that I mentioned, The Prophecy's Child from 1970. But this was one of her major contributions. And somebody did ask for me to play a song from this album. And Therese was diagnosed with MS really quite around the same time that this album came on. And it really affected her ability to continue to do music. But she did music for as long as she could. She couldn't play much anymore, but she did compose quite a bit of things. She has a couple of different CDs. And she passed away in 2011 from the complications of the MS. But this particular song is lesbian forward in a very positive way, and a sample of Teresa's humor as well as her writing.
My mama said I shouldn't have sent you to Cincinnati. You'd have done better at Youngstown, you. It's been 5 years and graduation's passed. From 30,000 kids, you're gonna come in last. Every time you come home, I'm embarrassed. You're looking less like a daughter and more like a son. Your father's going crazy for his little girl, that's me. He thinks you've even given that weed a whirl. Ah, mama, let your children go sometime. Oh, mama, mama, you gotta let your children go. When I was at home, I was a model child. So when I left there, I got a little wild. Whoa, 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 mama, mama, you gotta let your children go. Coming from a good Catholic background, said you got to be the virginal kind. Well, mama, they lied, 'cause now I'm satisfied. The women I've tried would make a good man cry. I think you should know how I'm feeling. I thought I told you before, you must not have heard. You handed me my life upon a silver tray, but Ma had to pawn it, I had rent to pay. Oh, mama, let your children go sometime. Oh, mama, mama, you gotta let your children go. When I was at home, I was a model child. So when I left there, I got a little wild. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Mama, mama, you gotta let your children go. Take it.
I saw y'all tapping your toes out there. That was a lot of fun. Treese was a good one. So this next one,
my mama said,
stop. Holly sort of came out in 1978, right, with her album Imagine My Surprise. She had several albums before that, but this was the one that got really attached through the lesbian community quite a bit. And then that same year we had Baba Yaga. They did a lot of Latin jazz rock kinds of tunes, but one of their favorite tunes that I don't have time to play is called Monogamy Splanogamy, which kind of was speaking to the time when, you know, everybody was not wanting to do monogamy much. And then also Mary Watkins sitting at the cafe at the Brick Hut, sitting there at the counter. She did a lot of, she was a classically trained musician. She's still alive. She's still performing, does a lot of soul and instrumental. And you also could hear her accompanying Kay Gardner quite a bit on some of their records that they did together. And then we have Maxine. Somebody mentioned Maxine before, so we're gonna do a little Maxine, the closet sale, and I'm going to invite Sally, if she's still here, to unmute yourself, Sally. Sally has a little story to tell about being in the Amazon chorus.
Right. Well, if you look at the back of the album in the small print way down at the bottom, you'll even see my name. So I had just come out in 77 in Boston, and I have to admit, I did not know Maxine Feldman, but a good friend of mine was a good friend of hers. And my good friend was getting together a lot of lesbians to create a chorus to back up Maxine because she was creating this album so that she could start sending it out as demos to radio stations and possible gigs or whatever. So I'm afraid I don't have a lot to tell you about Maxine other than she was just fabulous and fun. And we had just a crazy, crazy time. It was great camaraderie for me. The whole business of women coming together was just so new and fabulous. And yeah, it was a great experience. And when I listened to the music, I cringe a little, but it was fun. And we were glad to support Maxine.
Thanks, Sally. And Maxine also is from the New England area. She lived up in the Boston and Provincetown areas for many years. And she called herself a big, loud Jewish butch lesbian. And the song we're going to listen to is Amazon Woman, which is also quite long. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to give mostly a taste of it. But this also became kind of an anthem for the National Women's Music Festival for many years. Those of you who have ever gone know that it gets performed by Maxine or someone else over the years as part of the National Women's Music Festival. So let's hear a little bit of this.
Amazon women rise. Amazon women weaving rainbows in the sky. Amazon women fly. Amazon women fly. I am and once was called Amazon. Now I am called lesbian. I know that the matriarchy ruled back then. Sisters, the matriarchy's gonna rule again. Amazon women rise. Amazon women weaving rainbows in the sky. Amazon women fly. Amazon women fly. The goddess has not forsaken thee. She's just reawakening you and me. Heal yourselves, practice your craft of the wise. Amazon nation is about to rise. Amazon women rise. Amazon women weaving rainbows in the sky. Amazon women fly. Amazon women fly. Our Amazon witches have returned from
Okay, Maxine, that's enough. So she goes on and on. It's really a wonderful song. And I realized that I had forgotten to mention that 2 years ago, National Women's Music Festival did a compilation of all the versions of Amazon Women that they played throughout the years at the festival, and the various performers who have done it over the years. So it's a pretty amazing CD that came out just 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So now we're getting toward the end of the 1970s, and here we have Alive, which was a fantastic jazz quintet that played for about 10 years or so. Heather Bishop came out with some songs up in Canada. She was a performer. Sharani Avedis, one of the few Lebanese, the only Lebanese lesbians who had an album come out. She did a couple of versions of that. Robin Flower did a lot of folk and country. Which is which was from Germany, and a lot of their album is in German. I don't understand it, but the one song that's in English is Everybody's Worst Fear, where they admit to being man haters. And the whole song is about being man haters, which was pretty amusing to me at the time. And Ova is actually from England, and they had a song called the Lesbian Fighting Song on their cassette that they had. Okay, so now we're at the end of the 1970s, going into the 1980s, and we've been at this for a while, and I realize that, of course, I've overdone it. And so there's a couple of things we could do here. One is that I could stop, open up the mics, let you all reflect on what you have to say about anything that you want to say about all of this. And we could either decide to continue forward, which probably is another half hour's worth of stuff, or we could just sit and chat about what we've already heard. I'm willing to follow your pleasure.
More music. Yes, now. Huh?
More
Just
music?
like you did. Yes, yes, more music.
More music? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. So I will just keep on going then. So let me get the screen share back. And before you all turn your mics off, I recognize the 1980s. Do you recognize this? And were you there? I don't know how many hands there are. Some people are saying yes. Do you know what it is?
Poster.
This is.
We have the poster.
Oh, okay, right.
Wasn't it Carnegie Hall?
Carnegie Hall.
Yes,
that's right. Megan,
I was there.
The 10th anniversary of Olivia Records at Carnegie Hall on November 26th, 1982. And this, I was there.
I was there.
A lot of people were there. So it was.
You see it? Yeah. We have the poster.
There it is. There's the album from it. Very good. Nice, nice.
Poster.
Oh, that's the poster. And
Yes.
they had an album of it too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to mute us all again. Barb, I see your hand up. Did you have a question? I think you're muted.
He muted us all. All right, so Linda Shear is still here?
Who?
Linda Shear.
Yeah, she's still here.
All right, I just want to say, my life would not have been the same without your music in 1972, when I first heard you in Chicago. And I was in a free theater group. I don't know if you remember me, but I will always remember you.
I do remember you.
I was a lesbian, and I heard you sing Woman, I Can Love You. And I left the free theater and went to another place and started playing and singing my own music. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. I do remember you, and thank you for saying that. Thank you. It's interesting. I see all these posters. It's interesting to me. We never thought to put the years on the posters. It's like we look back at these and said, when was that? 50 years ago? Really? Could it have been? Interesting.
As an archivist, I can't tell you how frustrating. Anyway, all right. So now that we've established that we have Meg and Chris from the Carnegie concert,
One other thing.
Yeah.
I put on chat A Few Loving Women. Look at that. That was 1973 as well. And just Google it when you get a chance. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Barb. All right. So now Farron comes along in 1980. She had done a couple of cassettes that had very short runs, I think. And if anybody ever has them, I would love to get a copy of it or whatever. A friend of mine back in the 80s played them for me and I fell in love with them, but they were out of print by then, even then. But many people are, I'm sure, familiar with the Farron Testimony album. And Kathy Lewis will be happy to see this, that in 1981 in New England was the first year for the New England Women's Musical Retreat, which eventually became renamed the Northeast Women's Musical Retreat, because they had it in New York a couple of times. And so they had to change the name of it from New England to Northeast. But that first year had Margie and Alex and Maxine and Judy Sloan, who was performing she was a comedian performing in Connecticut at the time, Nancy Tucker, a musician who was also performing in Connecticut at the time. And then Anne Reid. So you want more music. So I have this queued up. I wasn't going to play it because it's kind of long, but you seem to be grooving on it. So I'm going to do this. Anne Reid is actually from Minneapolis. She played at Bridgeport when I first heard her in the 1980s, I believe it was. But this is not from her first album. Her first album was Carpe Diem, but this one is from a CD called Hole in the Wall. And I think it's one of her most incredible songs. And I think some of you may have heard it and maybe you haven't. I hope you enjoy it.
What can I learn from you? In your lifetime, and what you've been through, how'd you keep your head up, hold your pride? In an insane world, how'd you keep on trying? One life can tell the tale, and if you make the effort, cannot fail. By your life you tell me it can be done. By your life's the courage to carry on. Heroes appear like a friend to clear a path or light a flame. As time goes, you find you depend on show you the way. What can I learn from you? That I must do the thing I think I cannot do. That you do what's right by your heart and soul. It's the imperfections make us whole. One life can tell a tale. If you make the effort, you cannot fail. By your life you tell me it can be done. By your life's the courage to carry on. Sojourner Truth
Eleanor Roosevelt, Katharine Hepburn, Sally Wright, Susan B. Anthony, Harriet Tubman, Annie Sullivan, Gertrude Stein, Coretta Scott King, Amelia Earhart, Lillian Hellman, Arthur Kicks, Sacagawea, Ella Fitzgerald, Golda Meir, Dorothea Dix, Louisa May Alcott, Billie Jean King, Emily Dickinson, Lucy Stone, Margaret Sanger, Clara Barton, Billie Holiday, Juliette Lowe, Elizabeth Blackwell, Rosa Parks, Lena Horne, Beverly Sills, Barbara Jordan, Helen Keller, and Deborah Gandhi, Agnes Jamila, Corazon Aquino, Gloria Steinem, Rachel Cars, and Joan of Arc, Babes Harris, Marlene Dietrich, and Frank Simone de Beauvoir.
I do love the sound of a 12-string guitar. Makes my heart melt every time. So now we're into 1984. Faith Nolan had a couple of, she did a compilation album. Her first cassette actually was called Rainbow, and that's the one that came out in 1984. I had seen information about it, but I couldn't find a picture of it. But she had, these were some of the albums that she did after that. She had a song that was called Freedom to Love, which was on the album by the same name. Nancy Vogel, she had been around for a long time already, accompanying other musicians who had been playing for years. So she'd been around. Cheryl Wheeler, a local gal who, lesbian, who performs a lot in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and around the country, but she's based here. I did not manage to put any songs of hers because true to my word, I was going to try to find sort of like lesbian-centered songs, and she's a little bit more general. She is a lesbian, but I don't think she identifies herself. I could be wrong, and I'd like to be proven wrong about that if somebody happens to know. And then also in that time period, 85, we have Beth York, who did a album called Transformations that when it comes up in the catalog, it's listed as easy listening and jazz. And what I remember about it is that we played it almost every night at Bloodroot when it first came out as background music to the din of the restaurant. So that was pretty popular back in the day when that came out, when we were working in the restaurant. Deirdre McCullough also came out during that time, and the Washington Sisters. So we have to play a little bit of the Washington Sisters.
Eat it, eat it, eat it. Eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it.
I need your sweet inspiration. I need you here on my mind every hour of the day. Without your sweet inspiration, the lonely hours of the night just don't go mine. Whoa, a woman in love needs sweet inspiration, and honey, that's all I ask of you. I need your sweet, like honey, sweet inspiration. You know there just ain't no telling what a satisfied woman might. When you call me baby, baby, such a sweet inspiration, yeah. And when you call me darling, sets my heart a-skating. And if I'm out in the rain, baby, and in a bad situation, you know I just skate back. You know I just skate back Don't you know, I just skate back in my mind, and there I find your inspiration. Oh, I need you here on my mind every hour of the day and night. Without your sweet, like honey, sweet inspiration. You know there just ain't no telling what a satisfied woman might eat. You know there just ain't no telling what a satisfied woman might eat. Eat.
I always thought that song was a lot of fun. So now we're into the mid-late 1980s, and things are moving really fast now, right? So there's a lot more stuff happening. In addition to all the women who all the lesbians who we've already played, who are producing more and more albums as time goes on, there's the encouragement of a lot more performers to come out and do their music as lesbians, maybe not necessarily lesbian music per se, but still out there. Deuce was a jazz duo. They did saxophone and trumpets and flugelhorns and wind instruments, mostly playing jazz. The Indigo Girls came out around this time. Katie Lang with the Recliners. So this I had the date for this one, but it was also in the late 80s before she did some of the other ones that were coming out. Melissa Etheridge came out in the late 80s. And the interesting story I just read today, I was not aware of this, but apparently she had sent a demo tape to Olivia Records, who rejected her. I don't know if they ever regretted that decision or not, but she sure became pretty popular after a while. Jamie Anderson had her first solo self-produced album. A lot of these, by this time, folks weren't necessarily relying so much on Olivia or Redwood, but many lesbians were coming out with their own CDs, their own albums. And that was actually true even since the beginning of Olivia. There were many, many lesbians who were doing one or two albums that they'd done on their own, independently of a big label or independently of some of the women's labels that had been happening. Tracy Chapman, I guess we could call her New England. She did this album as a student when she was living up in the Boston area, but I don't know that we rightfully can call her a New England performer. Castleberry and Dupre did a lot of reggae. For a while, they were a duo for a number of years. I think I heard them down at Sister Fire one year, and they did a lot of drumming as well as some of the music that they did. And Lucy Blue Tremblay, who came from Canada and has been very popular for many, many years. And she's still, several of these musicians still have websites, and they're still, one of the things I remember recently was hearing Holly Near talk about when they were celebrating the book of Irene Young's photos. She was saying, a lot of people think we're gone, that it's nostalgia, that it's the old days, but many of us are still working and still doing our music and still out there keeping it up. So she was very adamant to think of them, not to think of lesbian musicians as not all in the bygone days, but still working and performing and being very active. Another lesser known New England based musician is Allison Farrell. I knew her quite well when I lived in the New Haven area. She only did these two albums that I'm aware of, but she still is actively performing. But the song that we're going to hear is from her Tomboy CD, and it actually became one of the theme songs for my radio show when I was out in Minneapolis. So the title becomes very apparent within the first few bars. But when you get to the chorus, it takes a minute for it to start. I'm not sure why it's so sluggish.
Who's that look so so sharp and feel so strong? Who's there to work so hard and laugh so long? It's that brainy, brawny bevy of broadstows, dykey dames done did the deed. I'm for them and they're for me. Oh, celebrate, I bless my lucky land. Jubilate, oh yes, I am glad I like being a lesbian. Yes, I like being a dyke. Na na na. I like being a lesbian. Yes, I like being a dyke. Na na na. They're feisty and fiery, dashing with voive and noive. They're lovely, luscious ladies who do not know their place. They're witty, witchy women with discriminating taste. Who a thrill ripples this homo heart. Who the chills thrill this matriarch. 'Cause I like being a lesbian. Yes, I like being a dyke. Na na na. I like being a lesbian. Yes, I like being a dyke. Na na na. I like women's music. I like women's stories. I love women's centers and their outlying territories. I like women's drivers and of course women drivers. I like what you like and we like dykes. Oh, sublimate, oh no, no more hesitate, oh no. I'm sure that I like being a lesbian. Yes, I like being a dyke. Na na na. I like being a lesbian. I like being a dyke. Na na na. I like being a dyke. Na na na.
So now we're moving into the 90s and the times they are changing. Things are winding down, I guess, or not. I don't know. Olivia has stopped recording. They're not recording new people. They're changing to the cruise line. And I actually earlier this year had an experience where a woman who, I don't know, maybe she was in her 40s or 50s. I don't exactly know how old she was. But she was surprised when I mentioned records by Olivia Records. And she goes, "What are you talking about? They're a cruise line." I was like, "No, they were a record company before they were a cruise line." And she had no idea, absolutely no idea. So I found that very intriguing and a little frightening, to tell you the truth. But anyway, so Olivia was not recording any longer. They're moving into the floating music business. Redwood started backing down a little bit. Hotwire stopped publishing in 1994. Bookstores are becoming fewer in number. Many lesbian artists are getting, some of them more and more are getting picked up by mainstream labels. The festivals are changing. Some are thriving, some are not thriving. I think Numer stopped in the late 1990s. So things are changing in our industry as we become, I don't know what, but we're becoming different. These were the last two albums, two of the last three albums that Redwood did. Melanie D'Amour in 1992 and Lillian Allen from Canada in 1994. And then these two gals, Irene Ferreira, this was the last Redwood album, Alma Latina, that Redwood did that wasn't Holly Near. Redwood had been doing albums for a number of years, but it kept being Holly Near albums after that, mostly redos of albums that she had already done, plus some new ones. But this was the last one that I could find that was a Redwood produced album. Um, she is from Venezuela, and Lourdes Perez did on her own album. She's from Puerto Rico, but she lived in Connecticut for a number of years. But they performed together a couple of times, and they performed on this album called Vestigos that Lourdes Perez did. And I want to play it because it's in Spanish, and I'm sorry that the words are there. They might be a little hard to see, but I think it's, just a little change of pace from some of the other music that we've been listening to.
Decía con voz de trueno, con autoridad de abuela, ten confianza en la vida, porque la vida es mi escuela. Tengo confianza en la vida, porque la vida es mi escuela.
No tengo yo pretensiones de sabio ni de elocuente, solo tengo estas dos manos y la historia de mi gente. Solo tengo estas dos manos y la historia de mi gente. Yo tengo la vida, tengo la vida, tengo la vida en las manos. Es consecuencia de ser mujer, es consecuencia de ser humano. Y yo tengo la vida, tengo la vida, tengo la vida en las manos. Es consecuencia de ser mujer, es consecuencia de ser humano.
So another New England artist, I see folks are starting to run out of battery and starting to slow down. So I just have, if you can hang in there, just two more. This is Laura Wetzler from 1998. She actually did this Touch and Go album back in 1982. It was a cassette. She was a performer in New York for many years, and she performs a lot of traditional Jewish music in Yiddish as well as in English. But she also has done a lot of songs for women. I knew her a lot when we were in Bridgeport at Bloodroot. She performed there a number of times. She lives in the Northampton area now, and she has this tune that's called The Taste of You, which is a little long. I'm not going to play it now because I want to get to this last bit. But this is also a wonderful tune that hopefully we'll have a chance in the future to listen to this. But I want to end here. Remember what I said about June and Jean Millington, about Fanny in 1969. And then they did Ladies on the Stage in 1978. And also Linda mentioned June Millington earlier when she talked about IMA, which is the Institute for Musical Arts. And Ann Hackler and June Millington founded it in Northern California in 1986, but in the early 2000s, they have moved out to Western Mass. So the Institute of Musical Arts is now located there, and their mission is to support women and girls in music and music-related businesses. This is kind of a rousing way, this last bit of entertainment before we go on to just a couple of ending things, but this is about that.
I had no idea who they were, but this 4 minutes worth of music, I was like hooked.
The queens of rock and roll, Fanny.
Take care of yourself.
Fanny is iconic, truly before their time. Men coveted rock and roll, that was theirs.
This is a girl with an instrument on. So, okay, this is a game changer.
Fanny was the first all-woman rock band that could really play and really get some credibility within the musician community.
So we broke through that barrier, and it wasn't through talking. We just fucking did it.
There was so much pressure all the time. I mean, you have to remember how young we were and how scared we were, really.
We're brown, and nobody knows where the Philippines is. And many times when I felt worthless and challenged.
It was hard. Being gay was still a disease. You could not be a lesbian in Fanny.
They're like my sisters. I've known them since I was 16.
Being in a rock band gave us a place to belong. We were all different together.
They made 5 records. You know, the Go-Go's get a lot of attention for what we did, and we only made 3 records.
They didn't have that #1 hit in the platinum records that the other bands had, but those other bands wouldn't have had those platinum records if Fanny didn't open the door. It's always the ones that started that get fucked.
Let's go back to where it all began. 17, then we started a band.
If I had many lines in my face as Keith Richards, I don't know that we would have been offered a record deal.
On the road, girls on the go, doing what we knew was gonna save our souls.
Rocking is a metaphor. When you fail, you pick yourself back up again.
They were considered badass, and they still are.
My big joke with my friends now, maybe I'll be famous when I'm 80.
I had no idea who they were, but this 4 minutes worth of music, I was like,
Sorry about that. I was trying to get it off to the next slide. So anyway, thank you for that romp. I just had to play that little trailer. I just sort of bring us around full circle from what Fanny did back in the 70s, and June Millington and Jean to a lesser extent, but certainly June was very, very much involved in the women's music scene, the lesbian music scene for many, many years, playing on a lot of the albums that we heard that were early on from Olivia and so on. But I think that they had a huge impact on women's music, and I got to go find that movie. I just found that trailer today. I thought it was a lot of fun. So I think it's worth it to try to go find out more about Fanny and what they're doing today, and that it seems like they've gotten back together again, at least to make this film. Anyway, so I want to thank you all very much. I do want to encourage you, please, to support Wanderground. That would be really lovely for us. You can go to the wanderground.org website, and there's a big donate button on the top. We've just, for those of you who may not be aware, we have found a place to house all of these many albums and CDs and books and memorabilia and artifacts and everything. We just signed the lease in May, and we have a 2-year lease, so we're on our way. And so just wanted to let you know we're going to have an open house in October, and if you could please support us to help us keep the lights on and keep things moving forward, that would be really, really wonderful. We would appreciate that, and thank you. I'm going to turn this, take off the screen share and see if anybody wants to say anything or share any ideas. That would be wonderful. And I just want to say, in terms of like the space that we have, one of the things that many of the albums and CDs that I presented during this thing are a part of my collection, probably because I was doing radio, but they are all now living happily in Wanderground. But there was another radio DJ from Connecticut who did a lesbian radio show for, well, she called it Amazon Radio, but mostly women's music for 20, 25 years. And she just donated her CDs and albums to Wanderground. And that's a collection of some 3,000, count them, 3,000. When I got the 32 boxes of CDs and albums that have come our way that I haven't even opened up yet, I have no idea what treasures are in there. I'm sure there's many, a lot I've never heard of before. So that's going to be another good part of Wanderground. So I don't know if anybody has anything that they would like to share or stories about any of the music or what it has meant to you over the years. Would certainly love to hear those stories if you're willing to share. No. One of the things I do have to say was when Chris Williamson was talking about Song of the Soul and how it had that early beginnings of a hymn. I remember when I went to Yale Divinity School in the early 1980s, and that the Song of the Soul was a song that showed up at chapel services on a regular basis. It kind of blew my mind because I was coming out, I was out by then, but the fact that they were singing a lesbian song in a chapel at the Yale Divinity School just kind of like, what's going on here? That was the only thing lesbian they ever did, but it kind of cracked me up. Go ahead, Windflower, you were going to
I just wanted to thank you for this. I thought it was wonderful. You did a terrific job, and I loved kind of tripping back in time and forward with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd say that too. Thank you so much. And I just feel so fortunate to have lived through these times.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't think that's what's ahead at all.
Probably not. Well, and it's also, I mean, you know, you think about it, some of those tunes are like 40, 50 years old, and there are young lesbians now who weren't born then, have no clue, you know, of what we're talking about. So it's just pretty interesting. But I remember doing radio and back in the 90s and playing nostalgia back then.
Then it was nostalgia, now it's history.
I guess. Well, I want to thank you all so very much.